Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast, where every day we explore a different topic around technology and business. And today I've invited Jag Lamba from a company called Certa onto the podcast. And we're living at a time at the moment where experts are predicting an economic downturn in the coming months. I would say we're already there, to be honest with you. And tech companies across the US have already implemented hiring freezes and are trimming up to 20% of their workforce. So, could this mean that corporate sustainability initiatives will also likely fall by the wayside in an effort to save cash? Because here in the UK, I've seen EasyJet, the budget airline, for example, I've seen that they've scrapped a lot of those green initiatives. And in the wake of a recession and a new wave of globalization, I've invited Jag on the podcast today to discuss specific practices that businesses can implement to prioritise things like ESG, to mitigate risk, maintain visibility into their supply chain, where ultimately 70% of all risk lies. And I think over the last 18 months, we've all seen how fragile that supply chain is. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to San Francisco so you can join me and Jag in conversation. So, a massive warm welcome to the show, Jag. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Neil, thanks for having me. I am Jag. I'm the founder and CEO of Certa. Certa is a third-party lifecycle management software. So what that means is we help enterprises manage all their vendors, partners, etc.
And I'd love to take you back in time for a moment, a time before Certa. So can you remember where your passion for technology came from, or just a moment that put you on the path you're on today? Or as they would say in those movies, what's your origin story?
When I first discovered programming, I absolutely fell in love with it. That was one of, I remember one of the happier times, just discovering and getting into programming. It just sort of agreed with me. It felt, it had all the elements of creativity and engineering, and I loved every part of programming. And then when I realized you could get paid for it, I was like, oh, this is great. You can actually build software, be creative, design good software and get paid for it. That was amazing. So, it's always, I feel like my identity is an engineer, and software, it really is, I think for me, a very creative way to express engineering. And, my dad was an engineer. It's just engineering is, I just love it. This is what I discuss with my dad, and it's something that really comes naturally to me. And I don't think of this part of my job as work.
Yeah.
When I'm designing software, building software, like overcoming challenges, problem solving, around engineering, just absolutely love that part of my job.
And I think what's beautiful about your answer there is how you brought your dad into this, and how growing up and you were having those conversations with him. It certainly seems like it's in the DNA of your family there. And unsurprisingly, of course, that path would lead you to founding Certa. So can you tell me more about the story behind the company and the problems you set out to solve with technology from the outset?
For sure, Neil. So, I started my career in as a programmer, as an engineer. And then I was living in New York, and, being in consulting and strategy consulting was cool. So I, got myself an MBA from Wharton, and then joined McKinsey Consulting. And, as I was consulting, I realized what a massive pain point it still is for two companies to work with each other.
Yeah.
It takes 3 to 6 months for for two companies, even after they decide and agree to work on each other, to start working with each other. And Neil, the reason for that is there are many risks that companies need to overcome before they say, yep, let's do it. So for example, all the compliance and regulatory risks, legal risks, information security, privacy, finance, resiliency. There are all these things that companies need to vet before they can start working with each other. And, of course, the big one now is ESG, right? Which is sustainability, etc. You want to work with other companies that share your values of, sort of lowering carbon footprint, etc. So what I realize is that this is a friction in the B2B transaction. And I just felt like this needed to be solved. This causes so many problems generally, just makes it's a transaction cost, right? Between B2B, between business to business transactions. And, the problems, of course, are numerous. Smaller companies face them more and disproportionately because, it takes them a while to get onboarded and get paid. And, larger companies don't get access often to innovation and new ideas because, they're unable to work with smaller companies. So, I really felt like this was a good, meaty problem to solve.
And it really is. And of course, fast forward to 2022, and we're having this conversation today, 5,000 miles apart, but we have the same issues to deal with on both sides of the pond because experts are predicting a huge economic downturn in the coming months. We're already feeling the effects of that now. And tech companies across the US, for example, have already implemented hiring freezes and are trimming up to 20% of the workforce, I read recently. So do you think this means that corporate sustainability initiatives could be at risk of falling by the wayside and in an effort to save cash? Because it seems like a fairly dangerous time to do that too.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Neil.
Yeah.
So is the economic downturn going to make companies more short-term focused and conserve cash versus make the right investments in sustainability, which is absolutely required for long-term survival and long-term growth of the company. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a typical short-term versus long-term thinking problem for companies. So of course the companies that are that have a longer-term perspective will make the right investments. I do expect fully that some of the companies, if their sort of survival is threatened, might withdraw from some of these sort of sustainability initiatives. However, the trend is very clear, right, Neil? There is no turning back from sustainability.
Yeah.
So if you look at, what are the main stakeholders for a company? They are, of course, your clients, your employees, and your investors. Clients are demanding more sustainable products, more sustainable companies, more sustainable services, etc. Right? So clearly, if you want an edge with your clients, you have to prove your sustainability credentials. In terms of employees, I mean, the best employees want to work with companies that have a positive impact in the world. So if you want the best talent, you have to do something with sustainability and, inclusion, etc. And number three, you might have seen, Neil, the number of investment dollars that are, reserved for companies that are working in a sustainable manner, right? ESG investing is attracted a massive amount of investment, and which has lowered the capital costs for companies that are more sustainable. So if you combine all your stakeholders demanding this with the regulators like the SEC, the European Union, with their CSRD proposal, if every key stakeholder for your company and the regulators are demanding it, then how long can you postpone this? You really can't. I mean, this is a train that has left the station, it's far away, and It's unstoppable.
It really is. And I was reading before you came on the podcast today about re-commerce and how consumers, or socially aware consumers, are embracing second-hand purchasing and making items last longer and embracing the circular economy. There are just so many big changes going on. And yes, we are in the wake of a recession right now, and we're seeing this new wave of globalization. But how do you see the road ahead, and what are the biggest risks that you're seeing from the trends you're monitoring?
Neil, every time there's a downturn, it also creates an opportunity, right? So I think, I don't know who it was who said, you should never let a good crisis go waste. So this is the time when companies can really step up and differentiate themselves as more sustainable firms. So, I mean, the data is clear, right? It's easier to hire if you're truly making a difference in sustainability. Consumers, as you said, they're demanding it. You can command higher pricing just from a business perspective if you're more sustainable, and the investors and regulators. So, I really think that through this crisis will emerge the companies that thrive. On the other side of this crisis, this economic downturn, will be the ones who make the investments in sustainability, because that is becoming the norm now. It's no longer an option to just burn fossil fuels to create your product and not, or to sell your service. It's like in sort of in the at the end of Second World War, etc., when there was this focus on sort of safety of employees, etc., right? You couldn't anyone who did not focus at that time in factories and safety and making sure that the employees' well-being was taken care of, they couldn't survive all the regulation and the customer demand, etc. And the coal-burning factories, if you will, died, right? Many of them. And I think we are sort of going through a similar transition now, where all of us, every single one, including smaller companies, have to be razor focused on the long-term investment in sustainability, because it is becoming table stakes. It is a differentiator for sure. It's leading to better financial outcomes as well. So it would be extremely short-term for a company to not focus on sustainability at this time.
I completely agree with you there, and I think it will eventually force the hands of leaders. And as you said, it will become table stakes, because businesses and consumers now have the same expectations from those businesses that they work with, that they want them to be part of the solution rather than the problem. And if they're not, they will go elsewhere. So the big question, I suppose, for any leaders listening or decision makers is, what can a business do to implement, or what can businesses implement to prioritize ESG, mitigate risk, and maintain visibility into their supply chain, where 70% of all that risk lies right now?
That's right. Your last statement, which is 70% of your carbon footprint depends on your supply chain, is really a very important statement for leaders to sort of pay attention to. What that means for larger companies is that this is where the complexity, but this is where the real impact lies, right, in the supply chain. And for smaller firms that are suppliers to larger firms, they need to know that they cannot postpone sustainability anymore, because their clients know that the impact and the carbon reduction opportunity lies in the supply chain. Like 70 to 80% lies in the supply chain. So it will impact both the enterprises and their vendors, right? It's going to have network downstream impact across almost, I would say every organization in the world. The complexity in meeting these needs is mainly in operationalizing these processes that enable sustainability. So, it's hard enough, Neil, as operationalizing a new process within a company. But when you try to operationalize a new process across your tens of thousands of suppliers, I mean, that becomes, really super complex, right? So companies will need to invest in, I think there's no way, but they will have to invest in technology to solve this problem. And there are many innovative solutions out there now, including one from Certa that enables companies to solve this on the supply chain. Companies will need to set clear goals and mandates, and that will need to come from the top. And those mandates will need to be accompanied with investment dollars. So the leaders, I think need to make this, long-term or even mid-term investment in the people, the tools, and, just overall championing and prioritizing this particular initiative. It's a typical, in terms of, how do you do it? It's a typical, people, process, technology problem. So, you need technology, you need the right people, and you need, sort of the processes. And I think for, if you will, people working on these initiatives, right? So, in many organizations where the leaders aren't being proactive in pushing these from the top, the bottom-up push is a real opportunity for folks who are passionate about this to not only sort of increase visibility, of this initiative within their firm, but also, if you will, be seen as future leaders of the company by pushing this. So I think that my main guidance to, if you will, the non-C-suite folks who want, their companies to be more sustainable is one, they should absolutely do it, because this is not only a good thing to do for the world and for their company, but it'll do wonders for their careers as well. This is the future. Like, people are going to look for people who are competent in this, right? Who understands ESG. And number two, they need to accompany this with ROI analysis, return on investment analysis, when they seek dollar from the C-suite. So if you combine, sort of your drive to solve this with an ROI analysis, I think, the business case for sustainability is very clear. It may not be, it may not have an impact in 3 months or 6 months, but Neil, I can't believe it won't have an impact in a year.
Yeah. And a question I've got to ask here is, because you're someone right in the heart of this, and people are coming to you and asking for your help, assistance, or help navigate the way around these problems. So what keeps you up at night? And how do you also keep your curiosity and open-mindedness alive to help find solutions and find that better way as we all navigate through these uncharted waters? Right.
So Neil, for me personally, I'm a die-hard optimist.
Yeah.
So I see this as an opportunity for all of us to make our world better, for make our companies better, etc. So for me, I am, I'm more I think encouraged and, have optimism about this new wave that I'm seeing across my clients, that they want to do something here. And I love it. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it and to be a part of, our clients' journeys to be more sustainable personally. So I feel more optimism than fear right now.
And I was going to say, as someone that is the eternal optimist, and there is a lot of doom and gloom if you spend too long doom scrolling down your phone, what makes you hopeful about the future?
So, I see this, Neil, as a natural evolution of change, right? So, of course, ESG, there's a lot of greenwashing sort of, and skepticism around sustainability in ESG, right?
Yeah.
But progress isn't a straight line, right? Progress happens, you sort of make a few initiatives, you have, you face some challenges, missteps, you course correct, and you keep going, right? So there's, in early days of any new major change, you see these problems. So it's just new and evolving. So what I see as greenwashing today, yeah, for sure it exists, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to overcome the greenwashing obstacles, and we shouldn't try to strive better, or we should dismiss ESG as something that's just like a checkbox item. The data is clear that this has the real impact on, financial impact on companies. One of the shining examples is Unilever, right? They're completely committed to sustainability, and they're doing really well, and attracting amazing people. Some of my friends, etc. Another example is Microsoft, where they're completely committed to sustainability, and have all these initiatives around diversity and inclusion, and it's an amazing place to work now, right? Which it wasn't the biggest attractor of talent until about 6-7 years ago. Okay. So it is. I think, while there are challenges now because ESG scoring is new, and, that has, obviously it needs to evolve, and that has, problems, and, because it's new, greenwashing is a problem. But, I think, any firm that thinks, has more skepticism about it, and enough skepticism that they're not acting on this, is going to get left behind. I firmly believe it. This is not. Yes, there are problems, but this is not something that we can sort of, if you will, just have our skepticism override action.
100% with you on that. And as for yourself, and indeed Certa, what's your biggest focus going to be over the 18 months, the next 18 months and beyond? Is there anything that you can share about the direction you're taking?
Yeah, for sure. The two biggest problems that we, are committed to solving are, one, making it easier for enterprises to collect data on scope 3 emissions, which is emissions from the supply chain. And number two, making it easier for the vendors to provide that data. And because it is painful, it is new for the vendors to provide that. So you want to handhold them. And obviously, for companies to collect this across tens of thousands of vendors is really hard. So, these are the two problems that, we've been helping clients with, and we feel committed to, making our impact in this area of ESG.
Well, a huge thank you for sitting down with me and sharing your story today. And I want to try and give a little bit something back to you here and send something out into the universe, because some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or listened to this podcast. So is there a person that you would love to have a private breakfast or lunch with? And he or she might just listen to this episode and maybe we can make something happen. But who would you choose and why?
So, my invitation and, sort of my ask is open to anyone who wants to make a difference in ESG for their organization, and is looking for some direction, prioritization, or guidance, right? So, if you will, an ESG officer at large enterprises, I would love to brainstorm with them, understand their challenges, and then, just explore solutions. That would be a massive, positive, if you will, gain for me.
And that is what it's all about. Collaboration. Love that. And for anyone listening that does want to find out more information about Certa, contact your team or dig a little bit deeper on any of the topics we've explored today, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, our website is getcerta.com. So get CERTA, Certa.com. And my email is Jag, so short for Jaguar. So Jag, like the car, at getcerta.com.
Well, as I said, I love chatting with you today about some of the best practices that businesses can implement to prioritise ESG, mitigate risk and maintain visibility into their supply chain. And that big stat there where 70% of all risk lies. It's incredible. But more than anything, thank you for sharing your personal story too. And I love how you're in your origin story there, like you say, DNA, tech is in your DNA, and those conversations with your father and the part that played in taking you where you are now. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing all that with me today.
Neil, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion.
So many big talking points there, but I think the most helpful was learning how businesses can implement solutions to prioritise ESG, mitigate risk, maintain visibility into supply chains where 70% of all risk lies. So, as always, let me know your thoughts on anything you heard today and anything you want to add to the conversation by emailing me now. techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today. So, a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.